Yes, thank you everyone. So yeah, I appreciate everybody and the hospitality. I mean, Bob and Diana hosting me for the overnight, that's really great. Saves us a couple bucks in hotel room and whatnot, so that's really cool. And all of you for coming tonight, really appreciate all that. And I feel honored to be here. I've sailed with a lot of you, maybe many years ago, maybe at Bayfield Race Week, or maybe on an international race. I recognize some of the boat names we talked about earlier. Yeah, so it's really cool to be here and be amongst, I understand from past history, Olympic sailors and ocean sailors. Little tidbits, and I don't know if I'll get to it later, but I'll mention it now, is the founder of our association, Don McIntyre. He's a storied person himself. He's done a lot of interesting things, some of it crazy and whatnot, but he set this up. But he used to be one of those VOC racers, those bought gas racers in the late 80s and 90s. And him and his friends, who are Jean-Luc Van den Heede, if you know that name, I'm talking all ocean solo racers, Robert Knox Johnson, Blythe, Chichester, all these guys. And he also sailed with Mike Clark from this club. So that's why I was over there. I was just taking photos of the plaque and the picture back there because I'm going to send them to Don tonight. And so anyways, he raced with Mike for I think 3 or 4 years in those races. So 50, 60 foot boats going around the world in the late 80s and 90s, not in today's technology, right? So it's different than then. So anyway, I feel really a lot of gratitude for being here. Thank you. So I'm going to divide my presentation into like 4 parts, and then we can have some questions after that. And the 4 parts I'll describe in a moment. But one of the things I wanted to kind of shed some light on is some of the work that we're doing in Thunder Bay. So part of that is a not-for-profit organization that I started 2.5 years ago. So this will be our 3rd summer. It's called Sailing into STEM. So we get high school students engaged in STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And using the platform of sailing to teach them these skills. And we did it, like I said, for the past 2 summers. And I don't need to start talking about any of the physics and technology that goes into sailing, but yeah, we get into some DC electrical systems, some solar stuff with the kids. We get them measuring sails. That's actually my main sail for my boat, compared to some other sails out of a IMX 38. The 2 sails beside each other look pretty ridiculous. But we talk about a bunch of, all the theory, Bernoulli's theorem and all that kind of stuff. Great crew, if you guys know him from Thunder Bay, he has a Lagoon 50, so he was nice enough to bring all the parents with the students on a Wednesday night, and we went out and watched the race, which was really cool, having the kids tell their parents about what was going on in the races and stuff like that, so it was pretty neat. We have a lot of guest speakers come in, Confederation College, engineering firms mainly sponsor the camps, but we also have Lickett Region Conservation Authority and stuff like that. Talk about, we're living on one of the world's largest freshwater lakes in the world, so it's pretty cool to help them out with that. A little bit of chart work, a little bit of GPS stuff. There's the 2 sails, the mains. Mine compared to the IMX 38. The jibs are ridiculous too. So. Culminating activity, they build a boat based on all the stuff, riding moments, displacement, all that kind of stuff, and we have some races at the end. This young lady went to Georgian Bay. I got her linked up with Broadreach Canada, and Broadreach Canada kind of does the same type of thing, but no STEM involvement. They are mainly at-risk students. And they give them opportunities to get on a boat and learn the skill of sailing. So she went down to Georgian Bay for 2 weeks. I just met her. Where's Carrie Ann back there, I guess? She's actually at my wife's school, and she was so excited to tell me about, she says, last summer, I spent 14 days on the boat, no land, she says, and she's just all pumped about it. And she was just like, I says, that's funny, because me too. And that's a whole other story. She looked at me kind of funny. So anyways, great opportunity. We did all of our races in the pool. Worked out really well. I could see the fan. The kids were pumped. it was pretty exciting. So that's week 1 in school sort of thing, and then week 2 is with Sail Thunder Bay, and we get them out on the boats and teach them how to sail. So for a week, and it's free to the kids. So that's part of the programming that we do with that. And then one of the things that we did quickly is just brought them on 5 or 6 different boats during these lunch times. And we started off with my boat, light displacement. Everybody jumped on the boat, and they're all like, "Whoa, this is cool!" And then the last boat is the IMX 38. And they all jumped on one side of the boat, and it didn't move. They're all like, "Whoa!" They're looking around. They're just flabbergasted. With J35s, we went up and they got to the last one. So it was a pretty cool program. We're going to be running it again this year, just to kind of give you background on some of the stuff that we're doing up there. So yeah, so here we go. So like I said, we're going to divide the presentation into 4 parts, and then at the end of each part, if there's any questions, then you can kind of ask, rather than maybe at the end you might kind of forget about what's going on. So it'll be the build of the boat, which is a Class Globe 580, 5.8 meters or approximately 19 feet. Next part will be shakedown sail. So shakedown sail lasted like a year and a half. So it's not just the weekend or anything like that. So the other part will be North Atlantic crossing, which was this past summer. And then what's next for me and my little boat. So here we go. I think there we go. So yeah, I mean, no great sea story start. Never began with eating a damn salad. So let's get going. So the build. So some of you had mentioned and did a little bit of research beforehand. It's based on a Polish design called a Sepka, which is a little bit shorter than my boat. This one here, and this is what I started with. This was the main drawing that I used. When I started building the boat, it was before the kits were available. So I forget the company name, B&B Yachts or something, or B&B whatever, in North Carolina. They sell the kits for these. If you want to buy one, you can buy one for like 12 grand or something. Cookie cutter parts, but I built it all from the drawings, so I laid out and measured each piece and cut them all up by hand. Based on these drawings, which are in Polish, which but the numbers are the same, so it doesn't really matter. It's all the same. Anyway, there's some words in there I had to look up, and Google translates your best friend now. So you can read a lot of stuff like that. One of the things I'll mention is, so old school, drawn by hand. Okay, all the drawings are drawn by hand. But then myself and a bunch of other builders using modern technologies to build a boat as well. So part of that is, and these are just random drawings that are all part of the package. And part of that, I think, is in the next slide. Oh my God. But we try and use some modern technologies in that, which is 3D design for designing some components and 3D printing things, using 3D modeling programs to lay out things, measure. And we did a model of the keel bulb, for instance, and then made it into lead and determined how much weight it was supposed to be, which was light on the design, which so between myself and the designer and the guys from B&B and a whole bunch of others, we sorted all this out because I was the only person. I was basically building right behind the guy that was building hull number 1. So, and I was the first one to launch as well in terms of the builders, which was kind of fun, but it was stressful as well because no one else had dropped a boat in the water. And yeah, so that was a bit much. So my rig is a Selden rig, which came directly from France on a slow boat. My wife, or my daughter, Julia. So Julia's drawing. She's going to want to be here for this.
Oh.
Tell her to come up here. So she was helping with design. We had like 10 of these, and we were figuring out colors and designs and all kinds of crazy stuff. And she's adding little fish and seaweed and all kinds of stuff like that.
The artist.
So the artist, yes. So here it is. The part that I was talking about 3D printed was the skeg, which is on the back holding the bottom of the rudder. So we 3D printed, actually the guy from the UK, one of the builders there, 3D modeled that skeg, sent all of us the files, 3D printed it, used it as a mold, covered the 3D printed piece in fiberglass, popped all the plastic out of it, that becomes the internal mold, and then filled it full of chopped glass and then the studs for the skeg. So as much as it's old school, we tried to use as much modern stuff as we could, and layout and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, grab a seat. Front row center. Not only has she heard the story, but they both lived it. So pine frames, and there may or may not have been some rum involved in the build. But this is basically the internal parts of the boat, which is all pine, and then some plywood reinforcing for the frames and such. That's the furthest most forward frame. Just doing the layouts and stuff like that. If anybody's built a boat here, you have to have a jig and lay out all your frames on it and stuff like that. So now the frames are getting put on the jig, and then we basically skin it with plywood. So that's a few shots of all that. The bow is pretty intense in terms of the way all the wood comes together. But it was kind of fun. Like my background, just so you know, I'm a tradesperson, I'm a machinist, and millwright, I hate to say that, in combination with machinist. And I also was a business owner before I got into education. So I owned a fabrication shop, machine shop, and we did a lot of work on the Lake Superior the freighters. So winter work, we would have the ships at Kiefer Terminal and do all the steel work and mechanical work and stuff like that. So I have a marine history, which is helpful, and you'll hear about that in a second. And then I've been sailing for almost 30 years, I guess, something like that. So I have some sailing experience as well. So the building part kind of falls hand in hand. Just some shots of some of the framework before all the pieces go on. That's a shot of my father-in-law helping me out. And this is all during COVID, so I don't know if I mentioned that, but I started the boat in July of 2020. It was this pandemic thing, anybody hear about that? So nobody wanted to hang out with me, except for my father-in-law and a couple other buddies when we got to the point of fiberglassing. But so pretty much, you know, not only do I sail the boat solo, but I built the damn thing solo because, yeah, there wasn't a lot of people wanting to come by. Because I built by hand, I laid out all the parts that I needed for the skin, or the plywood skin, on a computer program so that I wouldn't waste wood, right? So, which normally if you're doing a kit, everything all just comes pre-cut anyway, right? So it's no big deal. Just some more shots of the plywood getting applied.
What, are those stainless steel screws?
Yes. Yeah. Controversial. Should we leave them in? Should we take them out? Boat builder from New Zealand that is building the same boat. He says you never leave the screws in. No, so anyway, we're supposed to leave the screws in, so that's the way they are. And there's been no problem so far. This is the mold of the bulb. So I poured my own lead, which was new to me. It was something I'd never done before. 3D modeled it first, and we determined that it was actually light based on the drawing. So we actually, class association, then we changed the drawing, so it added some more weight to it. It took me 4 times to get it right. Overheating the lead and all kinds of stuff like that. So this is us bolting the pieces on. Each one of them is 72 kilos, which I guess with the keel, like you see the orange is the keel there, and the bulbs are 660 pounds. As I mentioned to some others, it's very similar to a J22 in terms of some of the sail area, it's ish. We tried to get a rating on this, and the guy from Thunder Bay gave it a rating of, I think, 178 or something like that. I don't know what the J22 exactly is, but
180.
Is it 180? Okay, yeah. So it's very similar in that sense, but it definitely is not the same performance, I can tell you that. As you can see, the keel is just a flat 5/8 plate. That's it. It's got a little bit of radius on it, and that's it. With these things hanging off the bottom. So yeah, but one of the reasons why I threw this slide in here was when my friends and I, there's 3 of us, sat around a kitchen table with some napkins on the table figuring out how much this boat was going to cost to build and whether we were going to do it. The one guy was a sailmaker, so he had some good ideas in terms of what it was going to cost and stuff like that. And I thought the cool thing about this whole project was going to be building the boat, because I thought it's going to be kind of fun to build a boat. And then I realized the community was way more, it was way more than what I expected. This guy, he won the 2021 Transat in his boat called Number 2. And he's from Switzerland. This guy's from the Netherlands. This guy's from the UK. He's from Switzerland as well. This guy's from Germany. And Alenka is originally from Slovenia, but she lives in Australia. So, and we're all building boats. And there's Don McIntyre. He's the association. So I did a snapshot of that. For some reason, I ended up coordinating all these things, but we had about 30 people, 30 builders on the group with the 2 founders as well, doing a little Q&A thing midway through the build, because everybody wanted to see my boat because I was the one furthest along. So I was there with my laptop kind of showing everybody what's going on. And I don't know if anybody's ever used West System before. So I went through a few gallons, 26 to be exact, between adhesives and fairing filler and all that kind of stuff. Just some more deck pieces. I built all the stainless steel bits, push bits, bow spirit, all the handrails, which are pretty extensive compared to a lot of boats. And there's my wife, here I am, helping me out with all that because we had to weld everything together in the garage during COVID. Yeah, so and just some more of the fiberglassing work up on the deck now, cockpit stuff, and again all to class association standards. Don McIntyre was watching our blogs to make sure that we're building the boat as per, not lightening it up and all of a sudden we got a whole bunch of carbon fiber inside instead of the bulky wood with loads of West System on it. So all the stuff has to go inside before you button everything up. So bilge pumps, just on the technical side of things quickly, 2 watertight bulkheads are inside, 2 manual water pumps, 1 operational from the cockpit and 1 from down below, and then also electric water pump in the bilge, in the bottom of the boat. Tried to run all my electrical that I needed first before I buttoned everything up because it's really hard to access just through these 4 little spots in the back of the boat. Some guys had a hatch down in here that was all sealed up later on just so they can access different things. The skeg bolts are down in there too, so once it's buttoned up, that's it. The only way I'd be able to get at that again is to cut it open and reseal it. So it's an interesting project in that sense. I enjoyed, like I said, I enjoy building things. We built the rudders, same thing from a set of drawings. Fared it the best I could. I don't know, I never built a rudder before, I have no idea. So we used like some people maybe know the term for this, it's NAC, I think NACA?
NACA, yeah.
NACRA?
NACRA?
NACA, N-A-C-A, it's the
NACA.
predecessor
There's
to
certain numbers
NASA.
for different profiles based on, on the cord and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it worked. That's what I gotta say. It worked. And I built another one too as a spare. Anyway, so all the layout, and there's the drawings and everything else for that. Built, actually the tiller I had to modify a little bit. A friend of mine gave me a tiller, which is all nice and shiny, just modified it to suit. A little bit of West System on there. We called it icing the cake, and then a lot of sanding, all that precious West System on the floor. Just a list of all the different fillers that I used, more for my own purposes. But, and then now it's getting a little shinier. It's looking like a boat. It had the Interlux 2000E on it for a while, which is gray and white and all that kind of stuff. So it looked like a battleship there for a while in the garage. And this was built in the garage, by the way. And I got to hand it to my wife, Carrie Ann, is that, during 2020, July, August, September, October is happening and the boat's getting, a little bit bigger and a little bit, And then she asked me one time, she says, I guess I'm not parking my car in the garage this winter, am I? So maybe not even next winter.
Any snow that year?
Yeah. So now the boat, there's a bunch of different, there's some pictures that are kind of all over the place, but this is the first emergence of the boat. And now we're actually wanting to flip it over at this stage, so I built a framework, and you'll see a friend of mine has a boom truck, so we had a lawn ornament for the day. And I had hecklers too. It was like people are walking by going, nice lawn ornament. How long is that gonna sit there? I'm like, never mind. So anyway, so we're modifying the trailer is what we're doing here, and then we brought the boat over to kind of set up all the stanchions. That's what was happening. Yeah. Now we're setting the keel on top, aligning it with the boat. I did my best in terms of all my background and machining and mill writing and stuff like that. So, we aligned the rudder. You can actually, once we're off, you can see the red line all the way down the trailing edge.
Wow.
So what did the neighbors say about an upside down boat?
Well, yeah, there's friends of my wife's, is your husband building like a boat or something? Or what is that thing upside down in his garage? Because they'd have the garage door open occasionally. Then this thing emerges, and I'm using my neighbor's equipment to lift, you know, the little excavator to lift the keel up on top and all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah, there was lots of questions. Still lots of questions, don't worry. And now she's up on the trailer, and I guess at that point, it was more or less, you know, fitting out stuff from that point, right? All the bow pulpit and stuff like that that had been fabricated already, now it has to be put on the boat, because I didn't want to do all that while it was painted, because then you're burning, you know, tacking everything together. So somebody had already asked me about the name. So the name, we had a whole thing of names, and there's 15 names there, I don't even know. There's a whole bunch of crazy ones. Everybody was putting their 2 cents in. I was almost stuck on some assembly required. It was almost going to go, and then there's always that saying you should try and do that on the VHF and see how that sounds, right? It didn't sound very good. So anyways, I always said that if I got another boat, I would name it after my mom, and my mom's middle name is Beatrice, so that's where the B comes from, B-E-A. Yeah, so it's a little boat, so I figured little B, so that's where the name comes from. She used to actually, back up, she used to actually work on the Great Lakes freighters. She was a cook, and my father was an engineer. I don't know how that all happened, but anyway, that's the background. Maybe I had it in my blood, I guess. So now we're fitting out the boat, getting a few things on it. A buddy of mine has a graphics business, so he did the names and stuff like that. Maybe some of you know this guy here. You can't really see because you're looking at his ass. Bob Vanderploeg. So Bob is now the fleet captain of Thunder Bay Yacht Club. A good friend of mine for over a couple decades, 2-3 decades. And he loves drilling holes in boats, so I figured when this time came, he was, okay Bob, you're up, you know, so. Yeah, so this is the stern of the boat. You can see here, regular rudder now, and it has 2 dagger boards on it. Deployable, retractable, all that kind of stuff based on the Sepkas. And they're handy. They have their good points and bad points. I tried them a million different versions this past summer in terms of where they needed to be and all that kind of stuff. So, and yeah, we're getting some electrical stuff happening, and the neighbors, you know, these lights are on at night, and they're all like, oh, it's Christmas time. Because our community, like where we live, there's not a lot of sailors. So, and then the mast is going up in the yard. I wanted to dry fit everything before we got rigging set up and all that kind of stuff. There's lots of back and forth. And I was thinking to myself, probably at that point, I was thinking, boy, it would have been easier just to buy another boat. There's many, many moments like that. I don't know if anybody built a boat here before, but yeah, there's some moments like that. So anyway, local sailmaker, Spear Sailmakers, built all the sails for my boat based on the Quantum specs. So Quantum is the class association supplier of sails. So if we do any class association races, we need to have their sails. And I just got a ruling from Don McIntyre that I can use these sails as, I want to use them as spares, because why do I want to buy 2 of the Quantum sails? And he said the only thing I need to do is document when I do use these sails, and I get a time penalty. But the time penalty I think is worth it. So anyways, yeah, so it's on the trailer. It's being towed by my same car I'm driving right now. Yeah, so this is launch day. It was getting pretty silly. I'm still drilling holes in the boats in the morning, you know, all kinds of crazy things. And we're launching. I figured I'm just going to launch it anyway and get the thing in the water and move along. And ironically, just before we were launching, I'm sitting in the clubhouse, and on the table in the clubhouse is this book, 21 Plywood Boats and How to Build Them. I thought, maybe I should have read that book before I started. Now we're ready to launch an hour. I'm like, oh no. Anyways, so we get the thing in the water. Life was good. I don't have a photo of it, but actually my nephew right here, not the most slender guy in the world, he's around 260, 270, and another friend of mine, Joel, they boarded the boat to bring it around to the slip, and it was just like, they were both on one side of the boat, and it was just this chaotic thing, and I didn't know if the boat was going to keep on, it was just like, yeah, it was sketchy. But it was all good, you know, 500-600 pounds of men hanging off the one side of the boat. It was like, oh my God. Anyway, so we're all on the boat, life is good. There's my daughter Julia and my other daughter Lauren and Carrie Ann over there as well. So it was great, launched the boat and all that kind of good stuff, and the look on my wife's face, she's really not sure as we're bringing the boat over to the marina whether all this is actually going to work out well or not. But we did have a couple beverages, and I brought it over to the marina, and life was good. And I had it in the water that year for 2 months, 8 weeks, I guess. And yeah, and that's the next bit. So yeah, any questions on the build part? Because I think so we're going to
Dan, can I have you slide a little bit closer to the slides when you're talking?
Sure, yeah.
That would
Yeah.
that'd be, then I get you in it, then I
When you
get you
say
in
that
it.
year, how long did, when was that year that it went in the water?
I launched in 2021 in August, the end of August. Yeah. And then the shakedown sale is basically what's coming up would be that 8 weeks, and then the full season of 2022. So I launched in May, and that's what I'm calling the shakedown sale because it was all, you know, still drilling holes in the boats and setting things up. I ended up with my new mast at the time and put it on, you know, still setting things up and rigging and revamping things and filling holes in the deck and all kinds of stuff like that. My buddy, we did a wrap on the front of the boat based on another person's boat. There's actually a video here, but I think I'm going to skip through. I don't know why that side's not coming. Again, just in terms of sail plan, it's a real simple sail plan. It does have a bowsprit, so we run this asymmetrical on there. I have a Selden furler on there, so it's 2 furlers out on the bowsprit. And then on the end of the bowsprit, which is like 3 feet out of the boat. So now my boat is 22 feet. And I have a Code Zero that we built for that as well. The foot on it is like 12.5 feet, which is, you know, it comes right back into the cockpit. It's just humongous, but it's powerful enough to get the boat moving in some light air. And I ended up using that sail when I went across the Atlantic for like 13 days, because I was 13 days upwind in a non-upwind boat, which was a lot of fun. Maybe some of you did at Thompson, so we're at Thompson here. Again, even that day we were, you know, rigging up all kinds of different things, just trying things out. So you can see here I got my jib and the Code Zero out. Just testing things, seeing how things were going to work and feel and all that kind of stuff. But super happy with the sails. If you guys ever, little plug for Dave, if you guys ever need some sails, Dave's a great guy. And there's my old boat, and there's my new boat. So that was my old boat, the CNC 30 Mark II, and a good friend of mine bought it, and we happened to be at Thompson there the one day, and so it was kind of an interesting picture, along with this one that a photographer took of us just back and forth in the harbor in Thunder Bay, and it looks like we're colliding, and my boat's really not that small, it's 50 feet back, I'm positive. It's, yeah, so it's an air due to, yeah, so, but anyway, it is quite a bit small. But it was kind of fun back and forth. That was, I think, actually when I first launched it, I think, and we were just, actually Julia was on the boat too with our little dog. And you can kind of see Carrie Ann right there. And yeah, so we're just back and forth, you know, and he's obviously hunting me down in my CNC 30. He's going a lot faster than anyway. Still lots of work to do. This is prior to launch in 2022. Still doing work on it, doing a lot of cockpit modifications, putting the wrap on. I built a little, this is actually a step for down below, but I made it dual purpose so it'll sit out in the cockpit so I can sit there. I don't know if any of you do that, night sailing, you can sit there with feet inside and kind of sheltered a bit. So kind of dual purpose stuff. I try keep weight down, you know, it makes a big difference on those smaller boats. I did some modifications to the keel. Don McIntyre is probably going to call me on this, but I'm going to use the excuse that I need a pintle for my my spare, not wind vane, I got this, I can't think of the word, what am I going to suit? Trim tab, sorry, trim tab. That's going to be my story because this keel, this rudder is mainly like this. So it's about 4 inches back, which a bunch of us thought was not a great idea, and we were thinking about squaring it up. So I use this as my excuse. So we'll see what happens. That's the way I sailed across the Atlantic, and it worked quite well. Just a little shot of the inside of the boat. So there's 10 bolts holding the keel on. Not much of a bilge, it's only like that deep. My wind vane that I installed, I talked to a few of you about it. This is a sail mat, big unit, aluminum castings, built for boats 20 feet up to 50 feet. But this thing worked flawless going across the Atlantic, right? So it uses no electricity, it's all based on wind power, and it's amazing. I don't know if anybody's used these before. There's only like 1 or 2 of them in Thunder Bay. Everybody's, I was at the marina, was just looking at this thing, and to see it actually function is just amazing. Like it's quite the feat of engineering. So that's hanging off the back of my boat. Inside the boat is a bit of a nav station. This electrical bit that's up here changed. I took it out and I put it back in again, but I wanted to make it look kind of like a regular boat. And this was similar to my nav station that was in my CC30. Another shot of us doing another zoom, and I wanted to mention this is my buddy Jim from Ireland, and he was quite the character. There's a whole bunch of other people from New Zealand and Australia and stuff, but he was from Ireland, and him and I were building at the same time. He was one of the 5 that did the 2021 Transat, and he quite the character. Something would be going on, and I'd get this message on Facebook, a video call, and I'd answer it, Jim, and he'd just be like this, and I, for a minute, and Jim, slow down. I can't understand a word you're saying, buddy. So he'd be just going on and on with some problem that he's having and stuff like that. So it was neat because we're all helping each other out. He was actually a really good guy for fiberglass, and he helped me out with that because I knew nothing about fiberglassing a boat or anything like that. This guy here, he was an electrical engineer, so he helped us all with the electrical bit of the boat, which for him was just walk in the park. But everybody had something they brought to the table, which was really cool. Like I mentioned before about the community was really neat. A couple of shots of my mast when it came in. It was kind of weird to actually have something brand new like that. It was like, oh, look at this. And, compared to my other mast, it was pretty cool. And then, sorry for standing in front of you. And then you go out on Lake Superior, you're looking for wind, I'm looking for this, and everybody knows that this is what happens, right? The lake is generally not all that windy for the most part, but yes, I'm trying to do a couple overnighters by myself, and this is what I get. I bob around in front of Isle Royal for a night, and nothing happens. Then it's foggy in the morning, can't see anything to get back. This is my buddy Bob and his J35, just to give you a little comparison between the masts. You can see a shot up there. I'm barely up to his spreaders, or just above his spreaders or something like that. So. And obviously Thompson Island, Silver Islet race. Did a couple of races, trying to race against a bunch of the boys from the club, and I can't go upwind. It was embarrassing. It was fun. I finished. So that was the benchmark. Did they finish? Yes. And then my wife likes this because this is pretty much sort of true. So we're moving along, back in the shop again. Now this is prior to 2023 in the spring, adding some lights, some serious stuff for some, making myself visible in the ocean. Added copper coat to the bottom, which ended up really well. Super hard to apply, but performed flawlessly. A couple shots of the first round of electrical for the system on the boat, and then I built in an enclosed box that is waterproof. So in theory, there could be water down below, and it shouldn't fry. We'll see. Solar system, charge controller. Yeah? Okay. The guys in Halifax did not know what that meant. So they're all just like, no, there's nothing. There's no nothing. Okay, next slide. This was on a t-shirt similar. I had one from Bigfield actually, and it said the lake is calling. So I must go. So I changed it in ocean. So that's on my hatch cover. This is a couple days before I went to Halifax. It just never ends, right? It's just when did you finish the boat? Well, it's still not finished. I don't even know when that happens, but mounting some poles for the solar panels and such. Safety gear, we need safety gear on the boat. This is my daughter Julia in my immersion suit, which was a lot of fun, right? Just bouncing around in there. And, she was testing it out. We didn't jump in the bathtub or the pool or anything, but this is kind of ironic, and you guys would appreciate this. So my storm dude has a reef, and the barker went and put some telltales on it.
You need those.
I know, I thought, really, Dave? You gotta be kidding me. So yeah, so we're cruising out to Halifax, 3 hours away. This is what's happening to me. Transport truck passing me on the inside of a corner. I thought to myself, if we go in the ditch, I think if you don't die because of this accident, I'm gonna kill you, because this boat, 3 hours away of this 3-day trip, and they're almost gonna put us off the road. So anyways, all went well. This was at the time when Trudeau introduced the carbon tax, so people in Fredericton weren't too happy, and I felt like one of these bears hanging off the back of the boat. Went to Armdale Yacht Club. If you ever get a chance and you're in Halifax, check these guys out. Wonderful hospitality, just incredible. It used to be an old jail, like a prison, and the clubhouse was the guards up on this hill, and the whole jail was down below, and they have pictures of them with the rifles out the window and everything else. I thought to myself, if I ever retire somewhere, it has to be on Sailboat Lane, and that's right just around the corner from the yacht club. That's a little picture of my stern getting busier and busier. It's got the the wind vane and the gas outboard and all my stuff hanging off the back. It'll be a little lighter later on. Still hooking stuff up, ground clamp on the keel and all kinds of stuff like that. My boat is light enough that, and these guys, this was the first for these guys, they're like, oh, how are you going to put your wind instruments on? Tilt the boat over. And this guy, he's still pretty concerned. You can't really see his face, but he's like, he's asking me some questions. No, it's all good. I've done this before. It's all good. Because one of the things we had to do for the class association was bring the boat over to the mast being 90 degrees. For the righting moment, we had to hang, I want to say it was 90 kilos, I think, off the mast. And that basically gave a measurement of the stability of the boat and righting moment at 154 degrees or something like that. I forget all the specs. So I had done this already. I knew it wasn't gonna, nothing bad was gonna happen. So that all worked well to put the wind instruments on. So there we are with that. So that's kind of the shakedown sail part. Still, it's in progress, right? So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that. So we're, like I said, we're into part 3. We're almost there. So this is last
just
summer.
one question. So this is the 580. Is that what's the name or what's the model?
So it's called a Class Globe 580.
Class
Globe 580.
And how many are being built right now?
Yeah, good question, Bob. So there's about 80 or 90 being built around the world right now. There's about 225 plans sold already. So, and there's, I think, around 25 or 30 that are launched, around 25, I think, that are in the water sailing. There's a few from the Netherlands that are just built a boat to sail it around and have some fun on the boat, which is cool. Yeah, so there's five gentlemen that just sailed from Portugal to the Canary Islands and then to Antigua just this past year. I think they started in December and finished in January or something like that. 2 from Los Angeles, 2 American guys. And the one guy knows this club. He's like, because I told him I was coming down here, and he follows me on Facebook. And he texts me, he says, "You're going to Wazana?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, this and that." And he's talking. I'm like, "Yeah, you know?" Yeah, I know exactly. And he knew the whole story and the story about my plants and everything else. So those 2, one guy from the Netherlands, let me think here, Swiss guy, and one guy from the UK did the race this past year. Yeah. So
As a class race, a one design?
yeah, so it's all the guys building the boats and sailing in the class association race. Yeah.
Do you have a head and do you have for transatlantic, do you have water tank on board?
Yes and no. To answer your question. Yes, I have a little portable head. I didn't use it when I was crossing. Use a bucket. It's a lot easier. It's a bucket, it's really easy. And then water I brought on board. So 120 liters I brought on board. It's very similar to the amount of water that we have to bring on the transats or the MGRs and stuff like that. So there's, if you guys know much about Don McIntyre, he has a whole list of rules. Notice of race is 45 pages, which isn't ridiculous, but he has a sandbox and he likes everybody to play in his sandbox the way he wants them to play. So he develops all these rules, and part of it is you have to leave the dock start the race with 120 liters of water based on each leg. So that everybody's doing the same thing with the same amount of water. You can bring an emergency water maker, but you get penalized if you use it. Right, so the idea is if you take your 120 liters of water and 2 miles away you dump it, and now you're faster than the next guy, but then you have to use your water maker for water, then you get penalized for that. So it's all about weight and managing your weight. Also, just on the note of all that kind of stuff, he's managing the amount of battery capacity that we have, the amount of solar that we can have. We can't have or hydro generators, but we can have wind generators if we want. So there's all these, which is kind of interesting. It makes it managing your battery power and all that kind of stuff kind of an interesting piece to the races.
Did you collect water then when you put on legs?
I can. I didn't on this transatlantic crossing, but yeah, you can. Yeah, so that's part of that too is, maybe in the tropics there'll be more rain and more opportunity for that. But I didn't really find that was the case when I did the Atlantic crossing. Yeah. Yeah.
Does Little Beast Keel collect debris, and do you have a way to get it off?
It didn't this past summer. I think I would end up, I do have a telescopic pole on board, so I'd be able to, you're thinking like seaweed and that sort of thing, and who knows what, right? Fishing nets and all that kind of thing. It does have a little bit of a slope to it, so the hope is maybe it would trail off. But yeah, telescopic pole. I do have a camera, underwater camera, so I can take a look at it every once in a while too, which on my YouTube channel there's a video of that. And it was kind of neat to see because I was like, whoa, okay, now I can see that there's nothing on the keel or nothing dragging behind the boat or growth and stuff like that. So.
Was your boat basically the smallest then, as far as a class or any of the competing boats that in what you're doing these single-handed stuff?
Like the races coming up?
Coming up and the trans,
Yeah, so they'll all be the same boat. So even this past race in this past November and December, or December, January, they're all the same boat, built to the same specs, same sails, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so it's a one design race basically. And I'll mention it coming up with the MGR, the Mini Globe race, will be the first race of its kind in terms of that. The shortest boat, the smallest boat, 5.8 meters, and a class association race. There's been lots of races like this, but with boats of all kinds of different makes and whatever, right? So yeah, so this will be it'll be kind of a one of a kind, yeah.
One more question. It's not for you, it's for everybody else. Is this the coolest looking that y'all have ever seen?
So we do have some swaggy stuff at the back there. Coffee,
Really great.
mugs.
I didn't know you had it until my wife was sitting here with wine in it.
Oh, you gotta test drive a mug.
So I was jealous. I was actually jealous for two reasons,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's a really cool
Thank
mug.
you, thank you. Designed, yeah.
Hey Dan,
Yeah.
so all that water that you carry, is that fixed in a certain location, or can you move it conveniently to one side of the boat for storage, or how does that
Right,
work?
so, yeah, so it has to be in containers no less than 10 liters. So, yeah, so they're all in different jugs, so I think they were 5-gallon jugs, more or less. And yeah, so on this trip, I wasn't super concerned about it, so I mainly had them in the bottom of the boat, right above the keel, right in the center. But yes, during a race, I think I'm gonna have, that's part of what I need to do coming up in November is make some fixtures on the sides of in the bunk areas, where on the high side I can move all my water up there.
So that's allowed.
Yeah,
Is the boat sensitive to weight placement and that?
Absolutely. Yeah, my body weight, from like when I'm in the cabin, and then because I have the B&G instruments, and it'll show me on my app heel angle and stuff like that, about 4 to 5 degrees. When I'm on the high side and I go to the low side, it drops. It's pretty significant, yeah. So that water placement would be key, right? Yeah, for sure. If I can move, you know, even if it's 2/3 of that water up on the high side, that'll help out for sure. Yeah, food, water, all that stuff, yeah. I even, there's a couple, I don't know if there's a couple shots here, but there's some on my YouTube channel. I even took my life raft and put it up on the high side in the cockpit. While I was, you know, downwind in 20-something knots of wind. And I thought it'd be better placed in the back of the boat on the high side back there, right? Get the weight out of the bottom of the boat. So it's really sensitive to that for sure. Yeah. So this is my track from last summer. It looks kind of obscure, and it'll kind of all make sense here in a bit, but this was the original route right from Nova Scotia. I was supposed to leave with 2 other gentlemen, one from Maine and one from Port Hawkesbury in Prince Edward Island. Maybe some of you follow this guy. His name is Alan Mulholland, and he has a boat called Wave Rover, and 21-foot boat that he built himself. And previous to that, he had a Contessa 26, I think, and he did a circumnavigation coming back up at the end of COVID. And then he sold that boat and started building his 21-foot, which he was supposed to build a 5.8 meter, same as mine. But didn't end up doing that. So then we kept chatting back and forth, and he started talking about what he's going to do, what he was supposed to do this summer, this past summer, which was to go from Halifax to the Azores. And then he had a friend that was in Maine that was going to do the same thing. So all 3 of us, that was the idea. And I was like, yeah, okay, this sounds comfortable because I've never done this before. It'd be nice to have 2 other gentlemen in their own boats, and we'll all sort of go together, it'd be so much fun. And then they backed out. So he wasn't finished his boat, and this other guy from Maine, I think he left from Maine. It was like 3 days becalmed, and we never, you know, he's a friend of him, so I never really had contact with him. And I was like, well, I'm here now, I gotta keep moving. So I left from Halifax, when was it, beginning of July, I guess, 10th, I think, 11th. Something like that. So the plan was, you know, south, 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 and then the little dog leg to start heading east, which is cool. But right in this area too, I ended up becalmed for 2.5 days, which wasn't great fun, sitting there bobbing around in the Gulf Stream. 28 degree water though, 28 degrees Celsius, which would be, I don't know, 80, 70, 80 something. I forget. Yeah. So sitting there, sails down, bouncing back and forth because of the swell, but still doing like 70 nautical miles east, which was pretty cool because of the Gulf Stream pushing me that fast. It was ridiculous. I'm like, yeah. So look at that big bug out there. What's that thing?
Sea creature.
Yeah, that's those North Atlantic things. That's scaled. That's scaled. It's a Loch Ness monster.
Is your track one to chase wind or to avoid weather systems?
Avoiding right here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are you using a weather router for this?
My weather, no. So the only thing I had on board was a satellite texting device called a Zoleo. So that was my only communication with others. And that I think is on the next page. So my weather routers were these guys. My buddy Morgan from Thunder Bay. This guy, Edward, he's a Golden Globe racer. I don't know if anybody follows that. Sorry. But he's from Halifax. He was my ocean guy. He had all the experience and all that kind of stuff. Another guy, Bruce from Saskatchewan, right in the middle of Canada. He's originally from Australia, so he has some ocean experience as well. And then another buddy, Pete, who's a 580 builder from the UK. He was also helping me out because of the time difference. And I'll explain more about that in a
So
second.
you were texting all these guys by satellite?
Yeah, and Carrie Ann and Julia, my other daughter, and about 30 people texting them back and forth, so, which was good. It worked out really well, you know, back and forth, back and forth. There were some delays and a few issues, but these guys, these 4 guys, were basically giving me weather information. So they were going on the NOAA sites and predict wind and windy and all this kind of stuff and compiling all this stuff. Because on that previous rate, right here, let me slow down a bit. Right here, we had noticed a storm coming up in this area. It was developing down here, it was moving up this way. And this was when I had no wind, and I was sitting there bobbing, and this guy, Edward, is telling me that you need to do something. You need to head west, you need to head south, do something. And I'm like, well, I can't move, I can't do anything unless I fire up my outboard. So it was a little tense because I couldn't see anything, and all I can see is they're texting, right? So this was just a shot prior to that. So this is me the day or two, or actually it was 3 days before I left, and I'm thinking to myself, how am I gonna get from Halifax anywhere close to the Azores, which is over here? How am I gonna cross all this crap? That's brutal. And then all kinds of other stuff happening up here, but 2 or 3 days later, a storm is developing down in here. So that's a bit challenging for those of you that know all that kind of good stuff. The blue and the purple is not very nice. So part of a lot of this is about the mental capacity and mental, having a goal, setting the goal, moving forward, staying on track, all that kind of stuff. So things like this were very helpful for me. The focus of this eagle or hawk or whatever that is, that's kind of what I had to do, right? I had to attack this and move forward and clear your mind of any doubt. Some of you were asking about food and stuff, so this was part of my my meal plan. Actually, they have a wide variety of this stuff, and it's actually not all that bad. Like, if I tried to make ranchero soup, it probably wouldn't have been as good as this. But they had all kinds of stuff, so I had lots of variety of different things. It was just getting a little bit kind of monotonous, that food, after a while, but it wasn't all that bad. This is shortly after I left Halifax. The sunsets, the sunrises, and all that kind of amazing stuff were just worked amazingly. There is a video in here, but it's all about these birds. And for the first 4 or 5 nights, these birds would arrive. Never saw them during the day, but they were after my masthead light and my stern light, and they were just being attracted to it. I don't know where they were during the day, but they were chirping birds that drove me bananas because I couldn't even sleep. Like I could hear them down in the cockpit. I couldn't sleep in the in the cabin. I mean, I couldn't sleep in the cockpit because they're so loud and they're chirping away and being a real pain in the butt. So challenges. When I left, I'm leaving Halifax. I'm not an East Coaster, down Easter guy or anything like that. So I knew there's lots of fishing activity and stuff like that. So the first, I think it was the second night, I'm out and there's some activity on the AIS. And it's like, okay, cool, yeah, I can see these guys, and this guy's heading that way, so I'm cool, I'm just gonna head up the middle. And shortly thereafter, it ended up like this. Because I think what happened, and maybe you guys know more about this than I do, but these were all targets of their fishing buoys and their fishing nets. Up here somewhere was the boat itself, but these things appeared, at 2 or 3 in the morning, appeared on my AIS, and they're moving. And they're all over the place. Like, I don't even know what was going on. Maybe they were getting pulled by currents and stuff like that and whatever, but these things were moving all over. And I'm, like, at one point I dropped the sails and I just motored for like 3 hours, 2 hours to get around these because I couldn't see them. There's no lights on them. It was pretty hair raising for sure. So there's some tense moments for sure. My buddy Morgan was plotting on Google Earth, and again, I never saw any of this kind of stuff until I got to the Azores. But this was that first leg, and I was heading, east from here, and then from there I head south later on. But again, this was in the area where I was in the Gulf Stream. Some cool ships. I thought to myself, geez, if I ever have a ship, I'm going to name it Cool Lizard, just for fun. Big tankers, saw a few on the way. Again, just beautiful sunset, sunrises. Ran my, this is later on, but sail changes and such. Running my asymmetrical for like 6 days in a row, 7 days in a row. With this happening, 15 knots of breeze, pretty much clear skies. It seems all pretty glorious, but as you know, if you ever sailed on Lake Superior, it's not always like this. It's not champagne sailing.
Why do you have your main down?
In that particular configuration, I was pretty much dead downwind. So the main, because it's so large and with that square top on it, it blocks that sail. So I would then have to head, probably 25 degrees up. Yeah. So it was just, under the sea conditions and everything else, I just dropped it, and I didn't really lose much anyways. I was gaining better VMG by having it down. Good question. So as you know, it's not all sunny skies and rainbows. Squid, the guys again from Halifax, they were just like, yeah, squid, big deal. But these things were jumping on my boat, right? They were like those, you know, the flying fish you see in the Caribbean. Well, these things were jumping on the boat as well, which I thought was pretty cool at first. And then I realized I couldn't see them all, and I didn't clean them up off the deck and in the cockpit. And they go to like mush, like pasta would, if you left it for 2 days in the pot. And then they rot and they stink and everything else. But these things were being chased by what I think was a big tuna, because I couldn't really tell what type of fish it was. But the tuna was jumping out of the water. There was 2 of them I saw. And then shortly after that, all of a sudden I can hear these things hitting the boat, hitting the side of the boat, hitting my sails, and then in my cockpit. And I'm like, holy man, I'm playing around with them, whatever else, took a few pictures. But I didn't realize it, but a few of them had jumped on the bow as well, I guess to get away from this fish. And they were in amongst my jib and stayed there for the night. And they inked, they black ink all over my jib and on the deck and everything else. It was just everywhere. It's still there because I can't get it off. It's like rusty crap on your.
It's a tap.
Did it taste good? Well, that's what some people were saying to me, and I didn't know how to clean them. And I'm like, no, you guys are going over, so I didn't do anything with them. But now I think I'm going to look it up and find out because, hey, calamari. I think it'll show a little bit of. Some people were asking me about the boat and how it handled. This is obviously downwind. Just a quick clip, and again, as all of you know, you take pictures of waves and stuff like that in video. It really doesn't do it justice, but you can see the boat moving all over the place. 2,000-pound boat moves around quite a bit on in the waves, especially when there's a confused sea. So generally there is wind from the stern, you know, big waves and swell from the stern, but then there's other storms happening in the Atlantic. And then you get these sometimes 3-4 footers coming 90 degrees to those waves and slamming on the side of the boat. So those aren't very nice ones. This here, you can't really see it well, especially with the lights on, but there's a system, what I thought was like rain clouds. You can kind of see it there. Like if you can see it where it looks like it's just rain on the water 3 miles away sort of thing. And I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. And I'm texting everybody and this and that. Well, at the same time, I knew I was diverting a storm, so it was a named tropical depression named Dawn, ironically. So at this point, I'm kind of heading south on that track, and my buddy Morgan's like, well, you should be able to see it. And I'm like, well, I see some cloud, but I don't see the storm. So anyways, I started really paying attention, and there was actually, I could see the V part here, and way, way over here, I could see the other part of it. So that storm was about 600 miles in diameter, and this bit that I'm looking at here is about 200 miles away. And then I kind of realized what I was looking at and how far away it was and all this kind of stuff. And I'll show it here in a little bit. So like I'm sitting there texting him and he goes, dude, you should be able to see it on your port side. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And I look around and I'm like, oh shit, yeah. I see what you're talking about now because I just thought this was, you know, rain on the water or whatever. So, and there's a bit of a shot of that in a second. Just some other shots of the boats and some waves in behind. Very often in this particular time period, there's waves which look like they were like up here from the back when I was sitting in the cockpit. So it was a little hair-raising sometimes. So this is what I was looking at off my port side. So this named storm is here. Up in this area was 85 to 90 knots of wind. And this is me coming along. So this is me coming, remember that big dog leg in my track? So this is me coming south, south, south. And what I was waiting for, I'm trying to stay in this zone right in here. I got a little too close. You can see I'm good here, but I got a little too close here. Based on the sea state, I just had to go downwind more. But anyways, as soon as I got to the south of that storm, and that's when I do the dog leg east. So as soon as I get vertical in behind this, then I head this way. But the problem with tropical storms, if you know anything about that type of weather, is that this one was tracking to the northwest for quite a long time, and it was predicted, and I'll show you the next slide in a minute, but it was predicted to do that just. But my buddy Edward, back to Edward, he was like, he wants no part of this because he's been involved in 100 knot winds before. with a 30, 40-foot boat, and knows what that's like. And he was telling me to head west, turn around, go the other way. Because I couldn't see what he could see, and just based on other information, you know, a few of my other friends there, my other buddies are like, no, it'll be okay, keep on heading down there. But a tropical storm can move, all of a sudden it decides to go the other way, being pushed by a high pressure system or something like that. It could just turn around on its track. And that's where Pete came in handy, because he was from the UK. When all my buddies in North America were sleeping, he was monitoring that same storm throughout the night, right? So I basically texted him and said, if this thing starts to move the other way anyway, different than what it's doing, you need to let me know right away, like within a half an hour. Because what I needed to do then was start heading, you know, southwest, right? Because this thing was moving, well, you can see here at 12 knots, mainly it was moving at about 9, I don't know what that one says, but mainly it was moving at about 9 knots up here, and I'm moving at like 6 or 7, right? So or 5 or 6. So I'm not gonna outrun this thing, I need to get going this way. So it was pretty hair raising back up here. So what I was doing, I plotted on my chart plotter the spots where the storm was. So there's one, there's another one, there's another one. So I can see it's moving that way, and that's me over there. So I'm trucking along here. I don't know if it has the time on it, but anyway, so this is, I'm plotting all these, changing them as they give me updates and all that kind of stuff. So in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, I'm going, I'm doing what heading where I'm gonna go. So once I did get south of that storm, I headed east, and I followed, I followed this lovely little track, and all of you know what that looks like. That's, you know, I think it actually shows in here. That's right in the sweet spot. 15 knots of wind. I followed 15 knots of wind all the way to Flores, part of the Azores. And it was a beautiful sail, downwind. And that's where I had the main sail down. Off I went. And that's is right in this area here. So I did that for 6 or 7 days, whatever it was, to get to the Azores. This is just a shot of me arriving pretty close. I'm like 67 miles away, which seems so close. And this is basically how I arrived. Usually I wouldn't have arrived in the night, but it was just like lit up, like I could see everything, right? So it was perfect. Got into the dock there in Flores. I would highly suggest that island. It's just beautiful. It looks like the Hawaii of the Atlantic. All this kind of stuff, beautiful, beautiful. Flores isn't great in terms of docking, but it's a fishing village and people are beautiful. Free dock too. Right up my alley. I'm a teacher and I'm a sailor. Yeah, I think the wind is free, everything else should be free. So, but Flores, yeah, so it's a beautiful island, lots of really cool things to see there. This is where that's my boat right down in there, so I came in there. Yeah, beautiful spot. This is Fayette. So some of you may have heard of the city Horta. So Horta is basically like the stopping spot for everything. Anybody going across the Atlantic, they stop here. But all volcanic islands, you know, literally, these people, they throw caution to the wind. They have cities right in the bottom of the craters. Just like, it hasn't erupted for like 150 years. We'll just develop our whole city down there. Yeah. So I met a lot of great people there on this gentleman, Paul. 15 minutes after I got my passport stamped, I hear somebody calling my name, and I'm like, calling me? I just got here. Nobody knows me here. But anyways, he's Polish, and he grew up with the designer of the boat, and he has friends in Poland that are building the same boat, and he has other friends and knows Don McIntyre and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, really? Like, he called me on the AIS coming in, and he was at the dock waiting for me. So that night, they called me over for dinner. They said, come for dinner, or something, whatever. I forget what we had, but it was just like, after being on the water that long, I was like, oh, bless you. So we traded some Alexander Keith's warm beer for some IPA of the Portugal's, I don't even know what it was now. That's their boat, expedition boat, beautiful steel thing. And when I arrived at the customs office, the customs guy says, oh, you're just in time. And I'm like, oh, just in time for what? He says, festival. He says, week-long festival called Sea Week. It lasts 9 days. And I'm like, you guys know how to party. You have a week-long festival that lasts 9 days. So there was music and food and all kinds of parades. They had the marching bands from all the islands. Everybody comes to this spot and they have this beautiful festival. And the last band, that's just part of the harbor. If you've ever been to, has anybody ever been to Horta before? No? Beautiful spot, sailing mecca really of the Atlantic, obviously. Joshua Slocum, anybody know that name?
1891.
He's been there.
Yeah.
That's where he went. Yeah. Yeah, so, food vendors, all that kind of great stuff. The last band starts at 4:30 a.m. Cafe Sport.
You were there?
Very popular bar to go to, inside. I think I have a shot of it. Burgies from all over. A lot of that kind of crap too. Not my favorite. Burgies from all over the world and all kinds of cool people assigning them and all that kind of stuff. This couple here, they're building a set cut on the island, so they came down and wanted to see the boat, and so it was really neat to meet them, and they talked about the island, and they wanted to see the inside of the boat, and they're like measuring stuff and trying to figure out what they want to do down below, so it was really fun to meet them. These guys were part of the festival. Actually, they just lived there. And I thought to myself, if I'm 80 years old, I'm going to walk around like that in a big red suit and carry this briefcase. And in the briefcase, I was like, oh, look at those guys. They have this cute little box that they're carrying around. And but no, they're smart guys. So I met them later on. Actually, it was the next night, I think. And they had the briefcases again. Well, they open up the briefcase. It's full of booze. They have glasses in there. They have some sort of, I don't know, whatever it was. And they're sitting there drinking away. Yeah, where these guys? I thought, you guys go away. A couple shots from Horta, some sharks and a few things.
Look like it's.
Yeah. One of the things they do actually on all the islands in the Azores is tradition is you paint, your logo, boat name, whatever on the docks. And this gentleman, that's Alan Mulholland's boat from 2019 when he came back around. This is Pico, the other island, in behind Fiel. So tradition, I did my boat as well, did my little logo, did my best in painting. This is like the night before I left or something like that. My boat is over there. So it was, had to do my best and leave my mark. There's a bunch of other guys from Texas that were there and they painted theirs right beside me. And I think they're a skeleton crew, they're from Texas. And they had a Swan 50 or Swan something or other, beautiful boat. And they entered the OGR, Ocean Globe Race with Don McIntyre, and they're veterans, and they bring other veterans on their boat and help them with PTSD. So anyways, they used my same colors and we helped them out. There's the inside of Sport Cafe, the bar there that I spoke about. You can see some of the burgies. It just so happened at Sea Week that they have sailboat races, imagine that. So they had a double single-handed race, and I did not come in last. I was like third up on the list. So it was like, woo, I got a little wood medal. And it was the day before I left the island, so it was fun. Right? Yeah. So this whole trip that I did last summer, it was just a continual thing of, wow, like I can't believe I ran into you and all this kind of stuff. But after I got to Portugal, I met Carrie-Anne in France. That was part of why she let me go. So we met there, we spent a week and a half or a week in Paris. And we're in La Sable d'Olonne, if anybody knows where that is. They start the Vendée Globe there, they start all the big sailboat races from there. Golden Globe race, Ocean Globe race, all that kind of stuff. Anyways, one of Don McIntyre's friends is Jean-Luc Van den Heep. He also was one of the first ones to sail and race a 650 Transat, mini Transat they call them, from France down to Guadeloupe or something like that in the Caribbean. So anyways, I wanted to talk to him about the boat, my boat that I was building, starting to build. You can see the dates here, 2020, April. And Don said, yeah, well, look him up on Messenger. He's at home, everybody's at home during COVID, it's April 2020. So anyways, we messaged and we chatted, video chatted for like 45 minutes or so. And he was giving me a lot of insight on his 650 that he had, because he had built the boat. This is in the mid 70s or later 70s or something like that. So he had built the 650. So I wanted to quiz him on, you know, what kind of things should I be looking for? What kind of things should I do? And you talked about weight displacement and all that kind of stuff. So it was really cool to chat with him, because I already knew he had won in 2018. He had already won the Golden Globe race around the world, single-handed, nonstop, using all the technology from 1968 and 69, sextant, all that kind of stuff. So in my mind, he's the best navigator in the world, and I think he really is still. So anyways, my wife and I were sitting on the dock in Lausanne. I had to stop every so often because my legs were so sore from being on the boat all summer. So we have to rest, we have to sit down. So we sit down. We weren't sitting there for like 15, 20 seconds, and Jean-Luc is walking across the street. And I'm like, Carrie Ann, watch this, watch this. I says, Jean-Luc, I called out, and he turns around. I says, so I went up to him and I started explaining who I was and this whole thing here, and he's like, oh yeah, Don McIntyre, blah, blah, blah. So we're talking, and I said, Carrie Ann, come on over, meet Jean-Luc. And she's like, are you kidding me right now? We've been in Lausanne in France for like 20 minutes, and you meet this guy, and you know somebody here? Like, I was just like, I was flabbergasted. I'm sitting there, like, cheesy grin, I'm like, look at me. Yeah, like, look at this guy. Anyway, so we chatted there for a little bit. He's been around the world 6 times solo, nonstop. Like, I'm just like, you're amazing, dude. Yeah, so sitting there in his damn flip-flops and walking across the road. This was just when I was in the Azores. This was coming through on my little countdown calendar. Being lost in the right direction, I thought that was pretty cool. This is me leaving the Azores, heading to Portugal, which I thought was going to take 9 or 10 days to 12. But I always had dolphins guiding me and guiding me out. It was so fun. Yeah, it was beautiful to have those right alongside the boat and everything else. Just thinking that, you know, this damn thing was in my garage not that long ago, and here I am sailing in the ocean with dolphins. It was just crazy, just crazy. I think this was a few days before I got to Portugal. Beautiful weather. I am tied in there. You can see my lanyard there. Safety first. Yeah. So why do I have a freighter here? So one of the things that happened in between the Azores and Portugal was, as I mentioned, I had all my freeze-dried food, which was fine, but by then it's getting a little And I did have farm fresh eggs from Halifax. So they lasted quite a long time, but now they're starting to rot. And about every 6 eggs that I cooked, 2 of them were okay. And so it was getting to the point where I'm like, I'm done with these eggs. I still have lots of water. I have lots of that Happy Yak frozen or freeze-dried crap. But I'm thinking to myself, back from my days back at my business, we did work on all these ships, and I know that there's a galley, I know that there's cooks. And I thought to myself, the next ship that comes on my AIS, I'm going to radio them and say, hey, like I need some stuff. And this May Mannix came up on my stern from 15 miles away when I saw him, so I radioed him right away. And I said, hey, this is the story. My eggs went bad, I have no more fruit left, all this kind of stuff. I have freeze-dried food and water. I could survive, it's not a problem. So this is halfway between the Azores and Portugal. We're about 450 miles away. Philippine crew, he said, the master says, yeah, okay, just 1 second, I gotta check with my captain. Comes back on the radio, okay, we got stuff from the galley, we're gonna set you up, we're gonna take care of you, blah, 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 this kind of stuff. And so they dumped over 2 garbage bags, and these were blown up, one bag within the other. There's about 4 of them. There's in amongst that, so there's 2 bags they dropped over the side of the boat. And you can't really tell, well, this is just some other stuff. You can't really tell, but they dropped me some crisps, which were like Ritz crackers, homemade bread, buns, French fries that were made from lunch. The best part, you can't really see it in there. They gave me some fresh fruit and a few things, but the best part was in this bag, which was 15 servings of chicken cordon bleu. It was just like, and a cake. And a cake, I ate the cake first. And I ate chicken cordon bleu. I ate chicken Cordon bleu for a day and a half. Breakfast, my wife's texting me, I'm texting her, she goes, how long have you had that? It's been almost 2 days. She goes, isn't it gonna go bad? She's all concerned about salmonella, and I'm like, never mind salmonella. What can go wrong? And yeah, I was sitting on the back of the boat, I was like, oh my God, I'm so stuffed. And looking at the sunsets, and yeah, but I figured, you know, and they're more than happy to help another mariner. It's just like anybody else, anybody on this lake or Lake Superior. Yeah, so it was good. So then shortly after that, I got some good wind off the beam, and I was cruising along at 7, 8 knots. And you can see I'm surfing down some waves and getting pushed along quite nicely. Couple shots, I think maybe this was, you saw this somewhere anyways. This was actually, I think, a sunrise, I think, coming from my bow. Yeah, because I'm heading east. A little bit of furry face going on compared to the beginning. I got heck from Holly because my friend Holly was like, you should have been taking the pictures every day, and then we could have done like a... And I wasn't thinking about that. I was just trying to get my ass over to Portugal. Yeah, so what was I going to say? There's another bit to that. So in terms of, well, like I mentioned, the speed and whatnot there. So overall on the whole trip, it took me 21 days to get to the Azores. And then 12 more days to get from the Azores to Portugal, which I thought the latter part was going to go a little quicker, but there's quite light winds and a few things were happening there.
How long did you stay in the Azores?
I think about 6 days, something like that. Yeah, it was, and part of it was, the festival, but it was actually weather. We'll say it was weather. No, it was weather actually.
And where did you go to at Portugal?
Portimao. So on the Algarve coast, on the south coast, which is all, it looks like Greece. Have you seen those photos of Greece? All the beaches and the high cliffs and all that kind of stuff. It's really quite a nice area. So Portimao is where my boat is. But so I averaged, the whole trip, I averaged like 4 knots, 4.0 on the chart plotter, which wasn't too bad for a boat. I did 13 days upwind to start with. And then I just recently decided I'm going to see what the average speed was between Halifax and the Azores, and that was 5.1. So I did pretty good on average speed for that little boat. I don't know, there's obviously the wind because my sailing ability isn't really all that great, but anyways. So yeah, so that was the bit going across. Any questions on that?
Did you get it on?
Naturally, yeah.
What did you do? Did you read the book? Did you knit a sweater?
I read, I could have. I'm thinking about whittling something. I'm going to get into wood carving or something next time. But no, I read like 5 books. I texted my family and my friends, listened to a lot of music. It seemed like the days went by pretty quickly, right? You're always busy doing a lot of things, navigating. Like it took me an hour to text everybody in the morning. Like it was, yeah, so there's a lot of things that I was doing, in terms of navigating and figuring out different things, sail changes, still sorting out things in the boat. It was ridiculously hot as well. Like leaving Halifax, I thought I was going to be freezing cold. I brought so much warm clothes as if I was sailing on Lake Superior, right? That cool, it's 30 degrees on shore and you get out on the lake and it's 4 degrees or some damn thing and you need a toque and a parka and the whole works. I had long underwear and my thermal socks and the whole works, and I used none of it. It was 31 degrees inside my boat for the most part, all the way to the Azores. I roasted.
Wow.
And that's Celsius.
Yeah, Celsius, yeah. So that's.
I saw the looks.
Is that not 100? 100?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 100 degrees. It was ridiculously hot. Like I was roasting. Yeah, I used none of that in clothing. It was a waste of time, and there's weight. Yeah.
Was the limited communication technology driven by economics, power consumption, or anything else?
During this past trip? Yeah, so economics really. I could have bought one of those, Iridium Go execs or something like that and had full internet access and whatever. But those are like $2,300 units Canadian, something like that. So yeah, it's more economics. And this worked, for the most part. My daughter Julie and I were supposed to do some chess, which I don't know if we actually did it, but the plan was to play some chess. She would move on her board, she would tell me what she moved, and I was going to move on my board. But we're going to do that next time, so that's the plan. So there's a lot of communication that happened there. But yeah, so, yeah.
What did you do at night? Did you have to get up and do your own checks for your night watch, and how often did you do that?
Yeah, so I slept mainly during the day. My longer sleeps were during the day. So then I'd get up and I could scan the boat, scan the horizon, see 15 miles around me really quickly. So that's when I did that. I slept mainly during the day and I was up longer periods during the night. So my sleep habits, I don't even know if they've really gotten better or whatever, because I'm still up during the night, which is weird, but which I never had that happen before, right? So yeah, so I spend a lot of time up, but I sleep. I'm a pretty good napper. I can nap, I can sit down on the couch and probably have a little 10-minute nap right now. So I had no problem sleeping during the day, except for the nighttime during those damn birds and stuff like that. But that's an important piece, right? Because you want to, I thought maybe staying up at night was better because then I can be alert and watching for navigation lights and paying attention to my AS on a more regular basis than during the day. I still have the alarms and all that kind of stuff on, but yeah, good question.
And could you charge with your outboard, or was it just strictly the solar panels?
I could with the outboard. It's a Tohatsu sail model, so it did have the charging ports, but I had no problem with solar. I had 100 watts on the back of the boat, and I had another 100-watt panel that I could put on top of the boat, and it was charging 200 amp hours of lithium iron batteries. And those lithium irons are awesome. The LifePo, you see the acronym for the lithium lithium iron phosphate batteries. I had no problems with capacity. I ran my AIS the whole time and my VHF the whole time, and still had enough power.
No refrigeration.
No refrigeration, no electric head, none of those conveniences, no power, no electric, no shower, stuff like that. No Netflix, no downloading movies, no. I could have with the Go Exact, but yeah, not so much. $300 for 100 minutes of time on those Go Exacts. So yeah, it's for downloading predict wind and all that kind of stuff, and the odd phone call and photos and stuff like that. So this is where my boat is right now. This is in a boat yard in Puerto Mayo. Great bunch of people. There's my lovely copper coat on the bottom. Not a bit of slime on the boat, not a mollusk, nothing, whatever stuff grows on the back of boats, on the bottom of boats during the ocean. But, so it's super clean, worked out really well. Copper coat's gonna help me. They did a post already with my boat and the pictures and all that kind of stuff. So they're willing to help me out with some of the social media stuff, but no actual sponsorship. So in November, I'm heading back to Portugal to prep my little B. I'm going to enter 2 races, which you may be familiar with already. So there's the Transat, starting in December. Again, Portugal. It's going to leave from Lagos to the Canary Islands. So that will take about 6 days. And then the official Transat, that's kind of like the pre-qualifier for people that haven't used the boat before. And then the Transat will be from the Canary Islands to Antigua, which is about 3,000 nautical miles approximately, something like that. So that's at the end of this calendar year and moves into 2025. And then from there, I'm going to enter the mini globe race, which is going to start, I think it's about mid or late February, and that's starting from Antigua. So the boat's going to sit there. It's about a 3-week time period in between. And then there should be approximately 20 boats that are going to be racing that same race. So again, one design, everybody's going to be having the same boats, which is going to be a lot of fun. And a lot of us, as the photos from before, a lot of us kind of like know each other already, right? So it'll be good camaraderie and helping each other out, getting each other across the oceans and stuff like that. So during this race, there's 11 stops. Not going around Cape Horn, going through Panama Canal. Actually, we're going to be going trailering the boats across the Panama Canal, or across Panama. A ridiculous price to bring your boat across, apparently. As well as you have to maintain 6 knots in terms of speed, and you have to have 2 others on the boat, in addition to the pilot that you have to hire. So 4 people on the boat, maintain 6 knots in my little boat. It's not going to happen. So we're going to trailer them across. and then head out from Panama. I think the route will, the next slide will show it, but basically then finish back in Antigua again. So the route looks like this, which is on the mug. Bob, hold up the mug. So Bob, you're up. Okay, it's on the mug. It's on the mug. So we're gonna leave this. Bob's receiving no money for this. I think Diana just did the Vanna.
She did.
Vanna White. So that's the Transat route, obviously to Antigua, Panama, Tahiti, Tonga, Fiji, and Darwin. So if you look at this, each one of these stops, sometimes there's, you have to stay at least 7 days, or I think part of Don's rules is, or at least when there's 25% of the fleet has arrived at that destination. So for that particular one, it would be like 5 boats need to be at that spot before then everybody can leave again. So it kind of keeps that front pack together, as well as the backpack kind of happens in the same fashion. So 7 days minimum. Panama is like 30 days, because I'm thinking there's a donkey and a cart that's going to happen. That's the way our boats are going to get across. And it's going to take 1 day for each boat. That's what I think. So 30 days in Panama. I think most others are like 7 to 10 days. Fiji is like 3 weeks. Mauritius and Darwin are like 8 or 10 days. Durban's a little longer, and Cape Town is a little longer. I think these are like 2 or 3 weeks. I think 3 weeks in Cape Town, I think. And the reason for this is it's pushing us back in the calendar. As you can see in here, we're not, start of Lake 3 from Fiji is not like mid-July, later July, to keep us from advancing too far and getting close to the Cape of Good Hope in the summer, or sorry, our summer, their winter. We want to be in this area November, December. And it turns out that a friend of mine who also sails with some of you guys, Alex Smith, is from Durban. He grew up in Durban, he was born there. So he gave me some good insight on a lot of different things in terms of where I could be and stop. Apparently they all wintered in Mauritius and stuff like that. But we talked about currents, and there's some serious currents that are coming down here, but not around the time period that we're going to be there. So then Cape Town, St. Helena, Napoleon, yeah. So he got exiled there. St. Helena, one single island in the middle of the South Atlantic there, and then Recife, which is in Brazil, and then up to Antigua again. So it should be about 14 months in duration, ish. But it's interesting in the sense that there's a lot of stops, and there's a lot of time to replenish and repair, and physically, mentally, in the boat and everything else. Yeah.
This is not to a race?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
I've got a league built up, and you have to wait, do you stagger your starts after you do the 5 days or whatever it takes?
As long as we're there for 7 days, everybody that's there can keep on moving, as long as there's at least 25%.
So the league you built up then, you sort of lose, and you
Sometimes,
reach several mini races.
So, yes, more or less, yeah, between these lakes. And it's only going to happen 3 times, like that situation.
Right.
Even though we're stopping in a lot of these other spots.
So if you built up a day's lead, you lose that.
Yes.
You start out again fresh.
Yeah,
Okay,
so
that's
it
really
is like 3 or 4 mini races, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting, that's all part of Don's little box of rules. Yeah. So it is kind of an interesting piece to that. So part of this, I put this little logo in the corner, is because if I can garner enough sponsorships, I'm thinking from a corporate level, if any of you are in education, there's a company called EF Tours, and they are an educational, they do like tours all around the world for students and stuff like that. There's a bunch of other ones. I'm trying to get an educational partner on board, because what I'd like to do the same sailing the STEM model at a lot of these different stops where I'm at, and give those youth in those communities the same opportunities that I'm giving them in Thunder Bay. So, it's a logistical thing. That's the issue, right? It's to bring people to all these different spots to deliver that program. Right? So, it's scalable. So once it's delivered once, people in those areas can do it again, right? So, so that's kind of the idea. I do have some sponsorship happening already. I mentioned that little Zoleo texting device. So Zoleo's owned, it's a Canadian company actually, but it's owned by Road Post, and Road Post is also in Australia and Canada. So anyways, they sponsored me another device, data plan, gear, and I think they're going to sponsor me for another data plan moving forward. They're in the US too, so if you guys are interested, it's a great little device. So them, there's a company in British Columbia that's interested in, corporate sponsorship. I just talked to a fellow in Slovenia, which I think is up in here somewhere. He has a company called Remigo. Remigo has electric outboards. So there's another piece to this. Don McIntyre says no gasoline outboards, so we have to use electric outboards. And the neat thing about it is, so mainly they're for getting in and out of port and stuff like that. But the neat thing about that is that we can use them during the race, which is interesting because if we're in the doldrums, there's no wind, like I got stuck, for 2 or 3 days, I could be using that outboard, but he's also limiting the amount of battery capacity that we have and the amount of solar. So there's some limitations there.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so it's tactics, it's utilizing not only sailing ability and navigation, all that kind of stuff, but it's also using what equipment you have on board to make it as efficient as possible. So I have a couple of things up my sleeve because a few of my friends are electrical engineers. So we're working on that. But anyway, the gentleman Remigo has an outboard. It looks like a rudder almost with a prop on the end. It's very, it's like those hummingbird type electric outboards or trolling motors. But these ones look like a full rudder and they're designed for this type of boat and such. So anyways, he's sponsored me. He's going to give me one at like 60% off and a bunch of other stuff moving forward. So I have a few people sort of in the works in terms of sponsorship. So it's working out okay, but it's a battle, right? It's no different than me trying to get money from engineers for my sailing at the stem. It's very similar situation. But I'm going to try and tie that in. That's kind of the plan. And I'll be the only Canadian in the race, so that'll be kind of fun. Even though, even though there might be some Americans in there too, the 2 guys from Los Angeles, they might enter. There's for sure a guy from Seattle that's entering. And if you go on the Class Globe 580 website, you can see the entrance. And you can see them on there. There's a bunch from all over the world. But a guy from Oregon. And then there's another builder, I mentioned this to a few people, there's another builder of a Class Globe 580 from Muskegon. And he's building, he was going to come tonight, but he had some other things going on, he couldn't make his way up here. So, and that would have been a whole other conversation in terms of the build at the beginning, because he would have been just asking all kinds of building questions. And you guys would have been like, okay, let's move along. Yeah, so anyway, I'm kind of not glad he's not here, but anyway. But he's not going to be entering the race. So I'll be the only Canadian in the race, and maybe 1 or 2 Americans from North America here.
How many boats total, you think?
My hope is 20, I think. There's 13 entered on the site already, and there's, I know for sure 4 others that are going to enter. 2 pro racers, one from Italy and one from Portugal. They're transats, mini globe race, or sorry, mini transat race. They race 650s, so 6.5 meter, 21 foot boats, 22 foot boats. So those people I'm going to be a little concerned about. Yeah. So, but the thing is too, my hope is that I'm going to be the only one with the most experience sailing the boat distance-wise. So hopefully I can use that learning that I had going across the Atlantic to my advantage. Like even the last 200 miles or so, I was learning things about the boat in terms of weight balance. You mentioned that, Dallas, in terms of gusts and stuff like that, moving my body weight around in the cockpit and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, lock this in. So I was taking little videos and speaking over it, and as a reminder, because a year later, you're not going to remember all this kind of stuff. So, yeah. So thank you so much. I really appreciate everything that everybody's done. So hospitable, and thank you for listening to my story.
Thank you.
Do you have a captain's license or any other certification? Just a builder and a sailor.
Builder and sailor. Yeah, I took lots of boating courses, like the Canadian Power and Sail Squadron and stuff. But no captain's license. I'm not like a captain by any means. Yeah. Good question. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Why 5.8 as opposed to another class?
Initially, I thought it was an interesting design of the boat. That was kind of what caught my interest, was the style of the boat. It was something that was achievable. You know, it had plans, it was a new design, it looked pretty cool, looked like it was a surfing type boat.
Had it fit in the garage?
And it fit in the garage. Yeah, it fit in the garage. So yeah, no real other reason than that. I guess there's lots of other designs I could have went with. I've always wanted to build a boat, and I thought about building an aluminum one, because my background is machining and welding and all that kind of stuff, so I could have TIG welded the whole thing together. But yeah, I thought this was pretty neat. And then the part of the class piece was neat to be part of other builders. Yeah.
You had said the keel is just a 5/8 plate with the bulb on it
Yeah.
and a rounded nose.
Just, yeah, there's a little bit of a profile on it.
How do you get lift from that? And zero lift?
That's why you can't go upwind.
That's the upwind part. But I mean, like I said, you know, it's best a little bit off the wind, like 55 degrees or something like that. But yeah, it's not great at all. Like even some of us, like the guy from New Zealand that was talking about a bunch of other things, what he plans to do is not do any class association races for a while. So he's designing some sort of foam piece that's going to go on the front of the keel, just to give it some sort of bulb shape so it has some ability. Yeah. But I mean, foam underneath in the water, and like now you got literally lift because it's buoyant, right? So I'm not sure how that's going to work. Yeah, yeah.
That keel you have, it looks like the ultra-modern design with the limited water line. Can you comment on that with the angulation?
Sorry?
You know how you have your keel is like this, you see limited your water surface area to water ratio?
Right. You mean like the shape of the hull?
Yeah, the hull, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so
not
it's,
keel, the hull, yeah.
yeah, it's a hard chine boat, which is really interesting because yes, when it is heeled over 15 degrees, now I'm sitting on those chines, and that's as far as it goes.
And are you using the rear, you call it what do you call it?
The dagger boards?
Dagger board on the rear, that you take the lifting one up when you're going on your, when you're heeled over?
So, when I sailed it on Lake Superior, I thought I needed those down all the time, especially upwind, because it did provide tracking ability and it kept the stern of the boat a little bit more solid in the water. And then when I was on the ocean, a few different things were happening because primarily I was downwind for the latter part of it, and I was monkeying around with a lot of different things, especially in the higher waves and wind. When I left the Azores a day and a half in, what was predicted as 20 knots was 35. And in that area was shallower water than what I experienced all the rest. It was mainly about 16 or 18,000 feet of water for the most part, but in that area it was around 6,000 or 7,000 feet, which sounds still like a lot, but it was a big difference in terms of the action of the sea. So I ended up in probably 25-foot waves. So with that, then I started experimenting with those dagger boards, because what was happening at the same time, I had a lot of following sea, but I also had that wave that was three or 4 footer from 90 degrees on those bigger waves, and it would hit the stern and push the stern over. And the wind vane worked out really well, but like it would track me back straight after the side wave hit me. So then I was messing around with the dagger boards, and was it halfway down? Was it all the way down. So all the way down, what I found was that then the rudder doesn't react as good because those dagger boards are only about this far away from the center line of the rudder. Now the rudder doesn't work as well in that trough of water flowing by the rudder, the dagger boards. So at the end, I ended up pulling them up, and I just used the rudder alone because it never really, it helped me track back down the wave. So I don't even know if that I'm going to use them very much. I'm going to tell everybody else I'm going to use them all the time. Must have down. And you can imagine too, if you do this with your boats or your J70s or whatever, stick 2 dagger boards, like 2 more rudders down there, then try and tack the boat. Try and push that sideways through the water while your rudder is over. You can't push, like it tacks horribly, right? So there's a few things. It'd be nice to have them on little electric winches, and then when you're ready to tack, you tack, back down again. Anyway, I don't know.
Sound
But-
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
Don McIntyre.
I know.
Something to say about that.
Yeah, well, yeah, probably. But I'm gonna tell everybody they're down. Yeah, you need them down. Yeah. Every little bit. But even on that note, like in terms of that kind of stuff, like is it more drag? Is it too much drag? Is it, you know, 1/10 of a knot gain over the leg distance is 24 hours. So that's significant, right? So if I can, all those little bits, right? Now I'm looking for those, you know, 1/10 of a knot. I'm looking for those little half. So I'm looking for all those little bits to gain because those are significant over that distance. So it's different on Windward Leeward. So. Yeah, awesome. Yeah.
So this is your first around the world.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
What about the rest of the fleet?
I don't think, I'm just trying to think of some of the other ones have done transats before, so they've been to the Caribbean a couple times with 650 boats and stuff like that. Some of them, like the guys from Australia, they've sailed up to somewhere in Asia. I forget the name of the race, Wasaki or something. I don't know what it is, but it's from Australia up to Singapore somewhere or something like that. So there's some people that have done some significant crossings, but never around the world like this. Very similar to what is going to happen. We're a bunch of different legs, right? So the longest leg is going to be about 4,500 nautical miles, which is the Pacific one. But all the other ones, it seems like they're all around 2,000, 1,500. When we get to Tonga, Fiji, all those are like 500 and 600 miles. So it's not going to take long to get there, right? So it seems, when you think of Lake Superior is 327 miles long, and yeah, it's a few days.
Will there be a way to track you? We're all interested.
Yeah. So Don's plan right now is to have yellow brick trackers. So it'll be just like any other yellow brick race where you can follow the whole fleet and see me and see all the others.
While we're drinking your coffee out of your mugs.
Absolutely.
Wearing a toque.
Absolutely, yes.
That's fun.
Yes, so, and there's a bunch of neat things about the race itself. So yes, you guys, everybody will be able to follow. I'll probably have a Zoleo with me too, which has the same function, but it doesn't have everybody else in there. Might be kind of redundant. But then the other neat thing is we can send photos from the boat. We can't send video, but we can send photos, and we can talk to people, which is kind of interesting in a bunch of different senses, right? I want to talk to my family. And that's part of being able to do something like this, is to have that contact during the race. So, but yeah, so that's how tracking was. Awesome. Any other questions? Yeah?
Oh, no, I was just pointing at Bard.
Yeah.
No, any more questions?
Yeah.
What did you find you wish you had most on your Atlantic?
More cordon bleu?
Oh,
I need like an airdrop or something. With the AIS tracker on it.
Is it considered outside assistance in the race?
What did I wish I had more of?
Really,
Probably more, well, I had no rum. Actually, I had a little bottle of rum, that was it. Probably me drinking on the boat while I was by myself would be a bad idea. Yeah, I don't know. Probably more music, actually. More music, maybe some audiobooks. I did a lot of reading, but it might be kind of neat just to have an earbud in with some audiobooks or something like that. It's just more that type of stuff maybe, yeah. Maybe a little bit more variety of freeze-dried food. It wasn't all that bad. Yeah.
Did you do any fishing at all?
Other than the squid, no. No, I thought about it, but I thought to myself, what am I gonna do with this big fish? All I have is a jet boil, and the rest of it would go in the ocean because I couldn't eat it all quick enough. But I might do that in the future, especially when I'm around some of the islands or if I'm becalmed or something, just for funsies. Let it go, I don't know, whatever.
Squid's good bait.
Well, yeah, or the squid, yeah.
Have you been practicing your celestial navigation in case you lose electronics?
Well, that's part of it too, is we need to bring a sextant with us. So I was practicing while I was out there, but I need to practice more. So that's part of it too. So we need to have all the paper charts, we need all that kind of stuff, and we need to be, I don't know what the duration is gonna be in terms of sextant readings, but doing the noon sights and stuff like that, yeah. So I have a sextant on board, yeah. I can't really say, I'm kind of hesitant because, yeah, I'm not great at it, honestly. So I think it just comes with more practice, and I think that'll help as well. Yeah. Good question. Yeah.
In the globe race, are any of the boats double-handed, or is it all single-handers?
All single-handed. Yeah, same, yeah, single-handed. There might be some double-handed in the Transat. Yeah, that's all I know. But single-handed for the MGR for sure. Yeah.
Construction of the boat, is it deck step mast?
Yeah. Deck stepped, yeah.
And then do you have a compression post? Or how is sleeping accommodations?
Yeah, so the mast sits right on the bulkhead. So there's a watertight bulkhead right there, so the mast is right on top of that.
Okay.
And then there's some white oak structure that's around there, so there's a hatch right underneath that bulkhead. So there's vertical posts, a big deck beam, and then the mast is on top of that. Yeah, good question. Yeah, there's two, I think I mentioned that, two watertight bulkheads. We can close off each area. There's lines in each, running to each area, so we can pump out certain sections or close it off totally. There's a watertight hatch inside, stuff like that. Yeah, so there's inherent safety features of the boat. Based on Don McIntyre's, like he did this around the world already. He ran into some problems. If you Google his name, he's got a YouTube video, and there's some stuff happening in the Southern Ocean that, yeah, were pretty scary for him.
So does that mean you can't sink if your bulkheads are tight?
Yes. I hesitate. I don't know if anybody's actually filled the boat full of water. I'd like to actually do that, is get a water pump and fill one section full of water and see what it's gonna do, honestly. Because I don't think anybody's done that yet. Theoretically, it shouldn't sink because you have a compartments that would be full of air more or less, right? Yeah.
So you don't have any positive buoyancy in the boat at all?
The only bit is right in the bow. It's full of foam because it's a crash box that's in there, and it's only like about this big. But what I plan to do is block off one forward bulkhead and fill that whole area full of foam, which is right in the bow more or less, which would add, I think the boat needs a little over 1 cubic foot of foam to create total buoyancy, and that would be like 3/4 of a cubic foot, or cubic meters, for your cubic yard. Yeah. So it needs a little over a cubic yard to float the boat, and I think that would be about 3/4 of that cubic yard. Yeah.
If the North Atlantic was crazy hot, what are your plans for staying cooler in hotter climates?
Yeah, good. That's a very good question.
Little solar-powered fans somewhere?
Fans, maybe. One thing that I didn't have, and I didn't really mention that, I had some slides on it, but from Halifax to the Azores, I didn't have any sunshade either. So I was ducking down below to be out of the sun, or I'd have like a longer shirt on the whole time and a floppy hat and all that kind of stuff. I did get sunburns because after a while I was like, I can't wear pants anymore. But I did get some sunburns because of, whatever. But so fans, yeah, and I need to do some sort of sunshade in the boat. We've sort of figured out, my good buddy Morgan at the photo was, he was one of my navigator guys. He's a mechanical engineer too. So he's figuring out some stuff that I can do. Maybe you saw those little sunshades, you can actually hold them with a halyard. And there's sort of a square piece and you sort of tie them down. Something along that line, something portable. Something dual purpose. Would it be something I could use for sale? I don't know, I wouldn't, I don't know, maybe. Yeah, yeah. Would it catch some air occasionally? Possibly.
But it has telltales.
Would it have telltales on it? Yeah. If it does have telltales, then they'd figure me out,
Yeah.
right? Good point, good point. Is there gonna be an articulating bowsprit? I don't know. I don't know, but we need to have a jury rig for the boat in case we lose our mast. So one of the things we need to design and test is a system to sail the boat without the mast in the boat. So it's all about mitigating risk, right? So we need to have holes on the boat and all that kind of stuff. So that's where the articulating bowsprit comes from, because the A-frame that I would build, probably, my mechanical engineer buddy's doing this, is probably 10-foot poles, which coincidentally is the same distance from the front of my mast to the end of my bowsprit. Yeah, that's a little bit that nobody else is gonna know. Don't post that on my social media. Oh yeah, good idea about the articulating, no, don't do that.
You said you had a lifeboat on there that you moved up into the cockpit.
Yeah.
What size did you
It's a
have?
4-person life raft. It's a Plastimo life raft that the 650s use. So it's designed, it's only 30 kilos. We just did this earlier, right? 60 pounds, something like that. So there's the life raft, that's boats going down, that's that type of system. My immersion suit, and then obviously I have an EPIRB, all that kind of stuff, PLBs for my, so that's kind of the safety gear on board. Almost the same that they're using on the Ocean Globe Race and the Golden Globe Race. Good question.
You said it's a rigid?
Or
inflatable?
The inflatable one? No, it's the square type emergency. Actually, I contacted, was it Barb, I think?
No?
About the
yes,
safety
yes.
at sea course.
Yeah,
So it's that type
Eric
of,
back there, we were trying
Yeah.
to get that.
yeah, so it's
There's
those
some of that.
square, throw it in the water, pull the trigger and it all inflates. It's those ones, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing we need is safety courses and all that kind of stuff. Yep.
Are you going to, are you allowed to bring a couple of spare sails? Well, what part of the rules, and what if you rip your spinnaker,
Yeah.
your mast up, you'll be able to repair that, or are you allowed to spare?
Yeah, so repairing, yes. My sailmaker from Thunder Bay, we're gonna get a kit together, a bunch of different sail material and sewing thread and whatever else, I don't know. So that repair piece, yes. The spare sails I wanna bring on board as well, which I think the spares are gonna be my original sails. So we're allowed 7 sails on the boat, main jib. The storm jib doesn't count, 3 asymmetricals of different sizes. So that's 5 sails, and we get to pick 2 other ones that we can carry that are part of the original kit. I don't know what you want to call it, the original sails. But I want to carry, I asked Don about this, is can I carry spares, right, in addition to the 7? And he said yes, and I want to use my sails as spares because even some of the other racing that's going on, the Ocean Globe or Solo Ocean Challenge right now, if you guys are following that, there's an American girl in there, Cole Brower, amazing young lady, 27, 28 years old, sailing around the world by herself. Anyway, one of her competitors, one of her peers, he had lazy jacks from his main going up, and his main, it cut a line right through his main. And he was there, he had to drop his main and repair the whole thing. It was like 15, 20 feet long of a abrasion that he had to repair. So because of the stories like that, I think about, okay, yeah, I need all this stuff, right? I need a big piece of mainsail, or I need a whole other sail, right? So I think I'm gonna carry nice spares, even though it's extra weight and penalties and this and that. I think it's worth it.
You guys, we can be here
How
for
much,
a
how
while.
much space do you actually have down below where you carry all of your spares, food, water?
I have 2 settees, which are like 6.5 feet long, so I can lay down in both. And then my area in the middle, in between, is, I don't know, about this wide, and 7 or 8 feet long. And then believe it or not, the V-berth, I can lay down in the V-berth if there's nothing in it. Well, that's all full of sails,
Yeah.
and my little portable plastic head and stuff like that. So. Cool.
John?
Would you
You're the
ever
final
want your
question until
daughters
we-
to do a solo run with your
Oh,
boat?
sorry, what?
Would you ever want one of your daughters to make a sailing challenge like this?
I could, yeah, I'd be nervous about it. I'd want to inspect the boat and make sure the boat was ocean capable in very similar style to this. I think they're capable of doing something like that if they wanted to. Maybe it'll inspire some people, maybe them. I don't think they're gonna do it for sure. Especially if they have that experience, right? I mean, you know, I see this Cole Brower running around. She's in a class 40 boat that she chartered, and she's already up, partway up the South American coast, heading back to France.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
Okay, we're going till midnight, but hold on, I gotta, thank you so much.
Thank you.
But when someone said you built your own boat, I thought you meant the ones in the bottles, you know, with the, like this one.
Small little tools.
Yeah, you know, like
Right,
that,
yeah,
that's
like these
it, like
ones.
that.
Yeah.
Well, not that, this would be extra weight, so you don't have to bring it with you, but you know, we're almost at 60 years as Yacht Club, so we have a couple of books here for you, and Paul, our Commodore, is here, maybe